America began as a racist country. It ends, at least for now, the same way. We have had chances to change. We saw examples of resistance. We were given ample warnings. But we were trained to look away when things got hard or messy.
White people, let's talk about it. Let's talk about our violence. White violence. No more deflecting. No more blaming everything on everybody else. Let's confront ourselves. White people in America, our history is so extremely violent. And instead of confronting that, we continue to blame other people for the issues and the problems in this country, instead of just taking ownership of our part to play in everything, which is a huge part. Can we stop scapegoating other groups of people, please, and just look at ourselves? White people, it's time to talk about it. Like, it's long past time. Getting rid of other groups of people in this country is not going to make this country better. It's not going to make your life better. It's not going to make you better. I think white people are so scared to talk about race and to talk about white violence and white supremacy because they don't want to connect themselves to it. We don't want to feel like we're a part of the problem. But unless you're acknowledging the reality of how the US, this country, runs, you are a part of the problem. I truly believe in my heart, in my soul, that if you're born a white person in this country or on this planet, but I'll just speak about this country, part of that journey is to dismantle systems that have been built to oppress other people. The hard work of life is to confront yourself. How do I benefit from the way that things are? And how does my benefiting from those things harm other people? And instead of walking around with, 1,000-pound bag of shame on your back, consider it your responsibility to do that work. Consider it an opportunity that you are in the best possible position to make this world a better place by not accepting racist and prejudiced and oppressive systems for what they are and trying to contribute to changing them. Use the privilege that you have for good. I don't think that anybody can ever really love themselves without being honest about themselves, without being honest with themselves. And that work is painful and hard, but it's so worth it. White people, you don't have to consciously think that you're better than other people in order to contribute to harm against them. All it takes to contribute to harm is to stay silent and disengaged. White people, can we finally get this shit right? Can we finally take accountability? Can we finally look ourselves in the mirror and decide that this isn't good enough? We're not doing a good enough job. You aren't losing because somebody else is safe and cared for. You aren't losing because somebody different than you exists. White people, let's talk about it. Let's start having these conversations with ourselves and with each other.
Grand rising kings and queens from Africa and across the ocean. Much love and power to everyone who has tuned in right now. And today, we are not talking about conspiracy theories. We are talking about consequences, because history doesn't sleep its memory, or history doesn't sleep, it remembers. And what America tried to bury for centuries now digging its way back to the surface, uglier than ever. America past is not gone. It is just wearing or wearing new clothes, okay? The same arrogance that once enslaved and colonized others is now destroying the very empire it built. So sit back and because I'm going deep in this, I'm going to maybe go back to the history, back and front, so that we see this uglier history of America, or the past history of America that is eating America up to now. Which one is that? But before I go down to that video, I want you to watch these clips here, and then we come back with more commentary.
America began as a racist country. It ends, at least for now, the same way. We have had chances to change. We saw examples of resistance. We were given ample warnings. But we were trained to look away when things got hard or messy. I'm talking to white people. You and I were tranquilized by comfort, not to look too closely at difficult things. Black people, people of color, don't have that luxury because they were scapegoated. They had to take the blame for all of our problems, as relatively minor as they were and are. We have the luxury of wondering why the hell black people won't just let it go. They never get a break from it. From the very beginning, power in this country was protected by blame. White people were told that our struggles were caused by someone below us. Black people, indigenous people, immigrants, women, poor folks, gay folks, anyone who couldn't fight back in whatever political climate we were in at the moment. We were taught that the problem was them, that the solution was obedience, to stay in line, to trust authority, and all of their problems are because they just wouldn't do those things. They gave us comfort as a reward, and comfort is the most insidious drug there is. Who wouldn't rather take a nap than fight for every scrap of basic dignity? When things got hard, they pointed at a scapegoat. When things got tense, they told us who we should fear, and hint it wasn't them. Then they promised to take care of it and let us go back to sleep while they built prisons and created stories to support the lies that black people just can't be trusted. And that pattern never broke. Trump did not invent it. His handlers just took advantage of it, and he shouted it at rallies like a war cry. He promised safety, status, and someone else to blame. He promised that to white people. He wrapped it in an American flag and sold it as salvation, and millions of us bought it twice. We didn't have to be tricked into voting for a white supremacist. We've been doing that for years, for centuries. It's what we do. This is the country we built, and we carefully branded it as the best and the greatest, even though we never had the courage to look closely enough to see the many men behind the curtain. This is where that story leads. But stories can be rewritten, and that is the work we have to do now. It's not about pretending that we're better than this. At this moment, we are not better than this. We are this. To become better than this, we have to do things that are not comfortable. Seeking the truth is hard. Choosing integrity means making conscious decisions every damn day not to blame the wrong people because someone else's finger is pointing in their direction. It means looking at that pointing finger and at who is pointing it and how they benefit from the blaming of innocent people. It means choosing every day to look for truth and not scapegoats. If you watched this whole series, thank you. Sit with it, share it, talk about it, especially if you're white, especially if it made you uncomfortable. Get curious, stay curious, and don't go back to sleep.
Every time I talk about history, especially the ugly parts, there's always that one person in the comments like, why can't we just move on? Or why do you hate America so much? You can just leave. And to that, I say, you don't want to move on. You just want me to stop talking. Because if we were really over it, y'all wouldn't be grilling hot dogs in the name of a war from 1776. Let's talk about this fantasy y'all have where history is just over because it's uncomfortable to hear. Y'all say we should get over slavery, but you celebrate the Revolutionary War every year with fireworks and beer like it happened yesterday. You say black people should stop bringing up segregation, but you'll wear a powdered wig to reenact the Boston Tea Party. You say we shouldn't dwell on the past, but you hang flags on 9/11 like a sacred ground and treat the Alamo like a church. So which is it? Is history important, or is it only important when you get to feel proud? We talk about atrocities, slavery, genocide, sterilization, internment camps, and lynchings, not because we're stuck in the past, but because the past is still shaping the present. Black neighborhoods are still underfunded. Native land is still being stolen. Prison labor is modern-day slavery. And the kids in Gaza are paying for policies that started decades before they were born. You cannot heal from a wound that you won't name. And the moment you say that was a long time ago, some law gets passed, some curriculum gets banned. And we're reminded that it's not over. It just evolved. You say, let's just celebrate the 4th of July. Cool, you're celebrating freedom that wasn't given to everybody. You say it's just Thanksgiving, it's about being thankful. Yeah, thankful for what? Land theft, broken treaties, smallpox blankets. You want the food, the fireworks, the flag, but not the facts. And that's the problem. The people who I'm talking to don't actually love history. They love a version of it. Cleaned up, whitewashed, and gift wrapped in nationalism. Learning about atrocities doesn't make us angry. It makes us informed. It makes us resistant to propaganda. It helps us recognize the patterns when they try to repeat them. And it gives us a compass, so we stop walking in circles pretending that it's progress. So no, I'm not moving on, because this country hasn't. But the minute that it does, I'll be the first to light up a sparkler and sit down for a piece of pie. But until then, we're going to keep naming what they buried, because the truth doesn't expire, and freedom, it's not real if it only fits some of us.
Welcome to the series, Our Ugly History. Let me start today's episode with a shocking truth. Back in 1954, the U.S. helped topple a democracy, not an enemy dictatorship, not a hostile state, but a freely elected government in Guatemala. Here's how it happened. Newly elected President Jacobo Arbenz had introduced land reforms, so poor farmers could actually work the idle, unutilized land. But that land belonged to, on paper, the United Fruit Company, a giant American corporation with friends in Washington. Arbenz wasn't a communist, but Cold War fear made him the perfect target. So the CIA launched Operation PB Success. They armed and trained a rebel force, they spread disinformation, and in June 1954, forced Arbenz out. In his place, the U.S. backed a military dictatorship that quickly rolled back those reforms and crushed any dissent. The cost? A civil war that lasted 36 years, leaving about 200,000 Guatemalans dead, most of them Mayan indigenous civilians. Later, investigations showed U.S. officials had even compiled a list of quote-unquote enemies for the new regime to eliminate after taking power. Declassified CIA documents in the 1990s confirmed it. America had traded Guatemala's sovereignty for fruit company profits and Cold War paranoia. This is history our kids won't see in a textbook. It's not comfortable, but it's ours. And we can't understand today's migration from Central America and the immigration influx here without facing what we did throughout the Americas. If you want to support this and make sure that your family's ready if the network should ever go down, check out my offline survival app. It's called Prepared. It's in the mobile app stores. It runs privately on your device. It's loaded with hundreds of built-in resources to answer your questions, no matter the situation. Remember the facts, even the ugly ones, and always be prepared.
If you are white in America, there is a pretty darn good chance that the Civil War you learned about in school was a lie. That was a 100-year campaign to protect white power. And the United Daughters of the Confederacy were the masterminds. The UDC was founded in 1894, and they called themselves Protectors of Southern Heritage. But their real work was making sure white children grew up believing the Confederacy fought for noble reasons. Not to keep millions of black people enslaved. They crafted the lost cause story. Slavery was said to be benign. Enslaved people were loyal servants, and Confederate leaders were honorable. If you grow up thinking your ancestors fought for liberty instead of for slavery, you're far less likely to question racism in the present. But we believe it because when you're a kid, you're coming up, the smart people are telling you how things are, you just go for it. The UDC lobbied to control school textbooks. They banned any book that told the truth about slavery or said that the Civil War was about human bondage. They said that Reconstruction failed because black people were unfit for citizenship. That lie became the foundation of white political thinking for generations, and it's still around today. They also covered the South with Confederate monuments. But decades later, in the heart of Jim Crow, these were not just memorials. They were public billboards for white dominance, placed right in front of courthouses so that black people would not forget who was in charge. White people need to understand this because we inherit the worldview they build for us. We need to question everything. When I say, get curious, this is what I'm talking about. The UDC engineered a lie so powerful, it still shapes America today. If you are white like me, learning the truth is not about guilt-tripping yourself. It's about breaking the spell. It's about learning the truth. I am not an expert, but I am an avid learner, and I'd love for you to join me. Help me keep doing this research for these videos by offering a donation of any size, if you'd like to, at ko-fi.com. Kelly Snyder, Spelling Matters. Get curious.
I am very confused by the amount of people who are not from Chicago that are commenting on what is happening in Chicago. From the people who are not even from Illinois that are commenting on what is happening. If you do not live in this city, if you do not live in this state, and you do not understand what is going on, and you are just blindly believing whatever the fuck is being said, listen to the people who live here. Listen to the people who live here. We do not want ICE. We do not want the National Guard. We do not want a federally backed occupation of our city. We don't want people to be snatched off the streets and taken from their homes in the middle of the night. This is fucking insane. The fact that we have militarized henchmen that are stalking the streets looking to snatch people off of them, insane. Absolute insanity. I have never felt unsafe in this city until recently, and that is because there are militarized individuals walking around the city with giant fucking guns. I understand that there's gun violence in Chicago. There's gun violence across the US. There's gun violence literally in every city. Also, Chicago is not even in the top 5 most dangerous cities. Can we talk about that? Can we talk about how we have this vendetta against Chicago and how it's like Chirac in the most dangerous place? We're not even in the top fucking 5. I truly do not understand the obsession by people who do not live here calling it the most dangerous place in America. Like, it's fucking insane. I'm sorry. What a world, what a fucking weird world that we live in right now. Also, the amount of people who are not talking or speaking out against what is happening right now, and especially influencers that have moved to Chicago recently and are riding on the coattails of an amazing city. That's fucking insane. You moved here, you see what's going on in this city, and you're not even going to talk about it? Why are people moving here? Why are influencers moving here? Why do people want to live in this city and are hyping it up if it is so fucking dangerous, if it is so terrible? Like, are you kidding me right now? I'm sorry that the rest of Illinois has their heads up their ass and they don't like J.B. Pritzker, but he is the best damn thing that has happened to this fucking state in a long time. And I don't care if this is going to cause me issues. So many of you are standing on the wrong side of fucking history. Like, what the fuck is happening in this world, not just in this city or this country? What the fuck? That's all I keep saying right now is what the fuck. If you cannot see that there is a problem with our government using our own military against our citizens, that's fucking nuts. That's fucking nuts. I literally fucking can't.
Let's talk about the ugly history of America, specifically school shootings. In 1840, there was a school shooting at the University of Virginia. This happens to be the first ever recorded school shooting in the United States. The incident happened between a student, Joseph Simmons, and Professor Davis. Professor Davis was popular with students and faculty at the university, which was founded by Thomas Jefferson. He advocated for leniency for rioters seeking readmissions, and on his deathbed, he refused to name his assailants. I don't know why it cut out there, but basically what happened was Professor Davis was living on campus and he was shot in front of his house on the campus of the University of Virginia. Sadly, Professor Davis did pass away after 2 days in the hospital, and his shooter was caught, and then he was later released on bond and disappeared, which he ended up taking his own life in 1847 by a gun. But what's so significant about this? It's significant because it is the first ever recorded school shooting in the US, and it shows a tragic history of gun violence in educational institutions, which it foreshadows what happens more and more in America.
They would breed our women and force them to have C-sections without fucking anesthesia. And the breeding farms, y'all, they didn't go away after slavery was abolished. It still happened. If you look into the father of gynecology, that man literally said black people don't experience pain. Therefore, he would not give the women any anesthesia to give birth, even when it came down to having a fucking C-section, bro. And as somebody who had a C-section and almost died, this shit just brought me to tears. Women were forced to be sleeping with over 100 men in one day. 100 men. And if they weren't to get pregnant, they would get beat. They would get literally limbs removed. They would be tortured. And this happened to men too. Breeding farms, you guys. Breeding farms. When I say The Handmaid's Tale, it started with us. This book, Black AF History, this is the stuff they don't teach you in schools. This is the stuff they don't tell you about in schools, because this is America unwhitewashed. One black slave was forced to breed over 200 children. One white slave owner had over 600 children by slaves. 600. And once they would have the baby, they were forced to go back in the field. And either the baby would be given away, taken away. And that's how the whole adoption process started. The adoption process has been shady since the beginning, because a lot of times it started with taking away slave babies that were the offspring of the master and the slave, because he didn't want his wife to find out that he was sleeping with the slaves. It's a lot of dark shit that went on in the fucking history of this country, and more people need to fucking know about it. When I tell y'all, everybody needs to get this book. Everybody needs to get this book. Read it. I don't care if you get it from the library. I don't care where you get it from. You need to read it and understand that this is the history of America, and it literally has nothing much has changed.
Welcome back. Now, to understand the chaos that is happening in today's America, the division, the moral collapse, the confusion, we must look at its birth, okay? The so-called land of the free. And land of the free was conceived through theft, through genocide, through slavery. In the very beginning, white settlers wiped out native nations while quoting the Bible. They kidnapped Africans, calling it business. They called genocide manifest destiny and slavery economic growth. That's not freedom. That's fraud packed as liberty. America's founding documents spoke of equality, yet the hand that wrote them owned other human beings. That contradiction is the original sin of the nation, and it has never been washed away. Now, every great American monument, Wall Street, was built with black hands. The cotton field of the South were the engine of the global capitalism, the sugar plantations, the tobacco farms, the railroads, all of it was soaked in African blood. The wealth of white America came from the pain of black America, but that blood is not forgotten, okay? When a country profits from injustice without repentance, it writes its own prophecy of downfall. And today, the cracks are showing in its economy, in its politics, in its soul, After the Civil War, America promised freedom, but delivered deception, okay? 40 acres and a mule became 40 years of struggle. The Reconstruction period could have been redemption, but white fear destroyed it. Black progress was met with terror. The rise of Klan, the burning of black towns, the rise of Klan, the burning of black towns, the lynchings used to teach a lesson. And in 1921, Tulsa's Black Wall Street was bombed from the sky. The only aerial assault on U.S. citizens by their own government at that time. Every time black people build success, the system burned it down, and the pattern still repeats itself through policy, through media. America calls itself democracy, yet it has always been a plantation where, with better marketing, power has never been equal, only disguised. From Jim Crow to mass incarceration, the political machine found new ways to control black lives. The same country that lectures Africa about corruption wrote laws to keep its own citizens from voting. Now, when you look right now, voting rights under attack again. Corporate money, ruling elections, political dividing or politicians dividing people by race and fear. So history is looping in real time. Okay. After World War II, America claimed to be the leader of the free world. But abroad, it supported dictators. At home, it segregated schools. African nations fought for independence while African Americans fought for basic humanity. In 1960, when Ghana raised its flag, America panicked. Not because of communism, but because of black confidence. Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, Thomas Sankara all represented the nightmare of a self-sufficient Africa. So America used the CIA to manipulate foreign politics just like it used propaganda to control domestic minds. Now, decades later, those same tactics are destroying its own democracy. Fake news, coping thoughts, lies as leadership, So, again, every empire that thrives on exploitation eventually collapses under greed. America outsourced its morality for profit. It turned everything, even human suffering, into a business. But capitalism without compassion becomes cannibalism, okay? And today, homelessness grows besides billion-dollar mansions. Student debt chains millions of young people. And the same system that exported exploitation abroad now imports desperation at home. You can't build heaven on stolen land. That is reality. Politically, right now, America's global influence is fading. Countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America are saying no to Western dominance, to Western dictates. BRICS nations are rising, and the dollar, once untouchable, is trembling. Why? Because the world remembers what America did when it had power. Invention, coups, sanctions, and lies. And now when the US cries out about democracy, the world sees through the mask. It is not hatred. It is what we call historical justice. Okay? I pause for a moment because I want to say this. This isn't just politics. It is spiritual law. Okay? Energy doesn't disappear. It returns. The suffering that built America has created an imbalance, and nature always corrects imbalance, And that's why storms, fires, and unrest seems endless. It is not coincidence. It is consequences. But correction is not destruction. Correction, it is cleansing. A chance for truth to surface, for humility to replace arrogance. Okay? Look around America today. Mass shooting every week. People arguing over reality itself. Politicians worshipping power instead of truth. Race, tension, gender wars, and class divide, all rooted in one disease: denial. A nation that refuses to face its past will be devoured by it. And that is exactly what we are seeing. We are seeing the past eating the present. While America crumbled in confusion, a new consciousness is rising. Black Americans are rediscovering Africa. Africans are reclaiming their history. The diaspora is reconnecting spiritually and economically. Music, art, culture are uniting voices across oceans, from Nairobi to Atlanta, from Lagos, Kingston. The rhythm is the same. We are awakening as Black people. It is a global Black awakening. And that's why the system panics, because the people it's tried to erase are now writing the future. Okay? American politics has become performance art, loud, divided, and empty. Left versus right, but both protecting the same elite interest. The poor fight each other while corporation collects offerings or dividends. Every election promises change, yet nothing changes. That's not democracy. That is destruction. And as faith in government fades, so does the illusion of superiority. The empire is imploding, not from outside attack, but from internal rot. Once America lectured the world, now the world lectures America. China builds roads in Africa while America builds walls at home. Europe seeks African resources while Africa seeks independence. The narrative has changed. It has flipped. The students are teaching the former teacher. History always balances its books, and the account of oppression is being settled in plain sight. Rome thought it was an eternal too until arrogance ate its core. Bread and circus replaced purpose. Corruption replaced discipline. Sound familiar too? Like Rome, America spread itself too thin, military, economically, morally, and just like Rome, its collapse will not come from one battle, but from thousands of small betrayal of its own ideal. Yet, even in collapse, there is opportunity, because when false power falls, real power can rise. And this isn't about celebrating destruction, but it's about understanding transformation. Because for centuries, black people were the backbone of America's wealth, but excluded from its table. And now, as the table cracks, we are building our own table. Black entrepreneurship and African unity, education rooted in truth. These are the seeds of new order. Africa is rising. Technology, youth, innovation, all moving forward without needing permission. The diaspora is returning not as slaves, but as investors, as teachers, as healers. And this is the reveal of history. Same ships that once carried chains now carry dreams. White America wrestles with its ghosts. Africa dances with its future. When you look at the US political system, it is trapped on its own contradictions. It preaches equality while funding inequality. It claims peace while selling weapons. It condemns dictators while propping them up. That's double standard. And it's visible now to every young generation online. The world is connected and truth travels faster than propaganda right now. America's image as the moral leader is gone, because morality cannot coexist with elective or selective justice. Okay? What we are witnessing inside America, protest, strikes, the delusionment, it's not chaos, it's awakening. People are realizing that race was used as a weapon to divide the poor while the rich feed on both sides. Black and white working class are discovering that they were both tools in the game of power. And once they see it, the system loses its control. And that's why censorship rises. Okay? Why truth tellers are silenced? Why? It's because lies can't survive enlightenment. Spiritually, this is time for revelation. What was hidden is being exposed. Every lie built to maintain hierarchy is collapsing, from Wall Street to Washington. It's not magic, it is math. When you multiply injustice by time, you get revolution. And revolution doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes it looks like awareness. So if you ask me, is America doomed? Not necessarily. But it must face the mirror it avoided for 400 years. It must tell the truth about slavery, about genocide, about greed, or otherwise the empire will eat itself alive. For the rest of the world, especially Africa and her diaspora, the lesson is very much clear that don't imitate the empire, outgrow it. Build justice before wealth. Build truth before power. Kings and queens, remember this. No nation escapes the weight of its history. Past is not dead. It is the teacher of the present. Okay? America's ugly past is catching up because it refused to confess. And until it does, every crisis will be another message from history. Okay? Now, but while one world falls, another is rising. Africa is waking up, and that's the best thing I'm seeing on this, because that's the mother of all nations. That's the start and the last. So Africa can't fall. So when all the nations are falling apart and Africa is rising, that's all that it matters. Truth is traveling faster than lies ever did. So don't fear the fall, prepare for the rise.